All right, this is a story in 4K that is not a crazy story, really. You know, it's not kind of one of those wow factor kind of stories, but I think it's a valuable story to share, and I think that it's also, you know, appropriate for a filmmaking channel because it was an incredible learning experience that I went through. That is an absolutely true story that I think anybody could go through. And in fact, it's a story that I think any filmmaker or storyteller maybe should go through. And it was the very last day that I was shooting my first film, The Center of Distance, which I shot with my phone. And first of all, let me just say that I'm shooting this on my Panasonic S5. I'm shooting with a Minolta 50mm f1.4. I'm shooting at f8, and that's the story with that. So, oh, and I'm using my Zoom H1N. They should pay me at this point. I mention this thing so much. And I'm using a Purple Panda lavalier mic. I also have a Boya shotgun mic on top of the camera just in case anything goes wrong, but too far away from the camera. So even if this thing screws up, I probably wouldn't be able to share this video because the audio on the camera is too far away, but I'm giving it a shot. So anyway, the very last day that I shot that film, I went back to my parents' cemetery. I had already shot there for one day at the beginning. Also, by the way, I'm shooting outside and there are no clouds in the sky, so that's why I shouldn't have that problem with the sun going in and out, but we'll see how that works, because sometimes these clouds appear out of nowhere. So anyway, I went back up to my parents' cemetery. My mother and father are both buried in a veterans cemetery up in Spring Valley, New York, which is about 25 minutes north of the Bronx. 15 minutes north of the Tappan Zee Bridge. And so anyway, I went up there for this final day to get a shot. And actually I went there the night before because I slept there that night. I slept in the car because I needed to get a shot as the sun was going down, and I needed to get a shot as the sun was coming up. And I also wanted to shoot this scene in dawn, you know, just as the sun was coming up. I don't know if that's blue hour or golden hour, but one of those hours. So anyway, I get up in the morning, and first of all, everything was going wrong. I was having all kinds of technical problems with my phone. I think it was raining the day before, which was totally inconsistent with how the scene was shot the first time. So I was feeling like if it continues to rain, I'm going to have to go home and come back another day. And everything was just all screwed up. It just wasn't working out. So anyway, I wake up in the morning and it's sunny. The rain is gone. So that's the first thing that happened. Also, I had 3 very long monologues that I had to shoot during this part of the film. And this was the part of the movie that I was kind of worried about because it wasn't really, you know, again, I based this script, I adapted this script from a theatrical script. So this was a proper screenplay, but I couldn't figure out how to get this part of the film or this part of the story to be more cinematic, so to speak. Like I needed these monologues. And you know, I was shooting by myself and I was alone, so I had some limitations. So I just decided I'm just going to do these monologues, and I set up the scene in a way that I thought was pretty interesting. So anyway, I do the first monologue and I knock it out pretty well. And another problem was that it was really windy. So I had to make sure that I was protecting the phone and the sound from that wind. So because I was trying to get ambient sound along with my sound of myself speaking, which are 2 separate sound sources. And I was also blocking the sound from my voice into the actual camera, the phone. I was shooting directly into, not this, but I was using a LG V20 for my sound. So anyway, I was trying to separate everything, and I was having technical challenges, partially because I had no idea what I was doing. So I knock out the first monologue, and I think it works well. And then I knock out the second monologue. And again, these monologues are pretty long. They're like 3, 4, 5 minutes long each, which is more theatrical than cinematic, right? So I get to the last monologue, And also there's nobody at the cemetery on this day. And it was actually a beautiful kind of spring day. I'd been shooting this film for almost a year. And, you know, it's a pretty remote cemetery, and there was nobody around, so I was lucky. And as I'm shooting the final scene, or the final monologue, all of a sudden, like 4 cars drive into the cemetery. And so I have to postpone it again because I got to wait for these people to leave, because it doesn't look consistent with the first 2 monologues, and it's all supposed to be happening on the same day. And I'm walking back and forth into the cemetery and then back into my car, and so I can't suddenly have things in the frame that weren't there when I was walking out and walking back in if it's supposed to be the same scene. And it's dawn, so I'm losing the light that I had. Like, the light also had to be consistent, and it's all natural light. I have no lighting. So I'm just thinking, you know, I'm gonna have to do it. So obviously everything has to work out for me to get this entire scene, meaning all the monologues. Otherwise I'm gonna have to redo the whole thing on another day. Well, anyway, all these people, fortunately for me, went to a part of the cemetery that was not in the frame. So I was lucky for that. So, and also I have all this on my mind. This is a very emotional part. This is the biggest part of the whole film. This is like the most emotional part, or at least one of them. So I'm trying to keep my mind right too. So I get into the car, I set up the phone, which is my camera, set up my sound, I got everything set up, and I start doing the monologue. Now, I don't ad-lib anything in my work. Everything is scripted. I memorize everything, and everything is scripted. There's no ad-libbing. I'm not kind of flying by the seat of my pants other than the shooting, but the script, the dialogue is all scripted. It's very worked out. Anyway, I start doing this monologue, and I'm doing it over and over again. And the LG V40 doesn't have any limit on recording time, so I could just keep going. So I do it once, and I could just tell I didn't get it. You know, I didn't nail it. It's a very emotional part. And I do it a second time, and again, I didn't nail it. And I could just tell I didn't need to watch it back, so I just keep going, I keep going. And then finally, I look out at my parents' graves. And I hadn't been looking at them at all during this part. I've been just trying to get this last shot with all this stuff going on around me. And I look out at their graves, and it's almost like I can see them. It's almost like they're looking at me like, come on, you got this. Just take a deep breath and just focus, you got this. And I thought that was really generous, because what I'm saying in these monologues would not be easy for them to hear if they were still alive. But I was speaking to them as if they were alive, and then I'm starting to get very spiritual with it, and I'm thinking, maybe they're here. You know, maybe they're actually, if you believe in that kind of thing, and that's actually what the monologue is about. Like, I'm not sure if I believe in that kind of stuff. Like, I don't not believe it, but I'm not sure, and I'm not religious, and I'm just not religious like that, but I am very spiritual. So I'm thinking, who knows? Maybe they're here, you know? And so all of a sudden I start doing the monologue again. And because I think that they're here, and because I can kind of see my father's face, and I can see my mother's face in front of me, and also I can see my biological mother's face in front of me, because that's kind of what this film is about as well. It's about my mother and my mother and my father and my father. It's about all these people. And I start talking, and all of a sudden, for the first time in this 2-hour and 7-minute script, I find myself off script. And I find myself saying things to my parents that I carry with me every day of my life, in real life, because they're things that I wish that I had said to them before they died, that I never got to say, that I guess I wasn't even there yet in my life when they had passed away. But now I was. And all of a sudden I was just not in that car. I was not making a movie. This was not art. This was real life. And I was talking to my parents, and I just continued, you know, and I just like kind of let it go. And, you know, I think that's something that a good actor is going to do anyway. Like, if something happens that you feel in your chest, like if something is just like overtaking you, and it's just becoming what is in that moment, like what literally is happening in that moment. You have to go with it, especially if you're just by yourself and you're not working with a partner who's relying upon you. But even if you're working with a partner, that person should be good enough to go with you. And so I just keep going. And I speak this entire monologue that had nothing to do with the script. And I say everything that I wanted to say to my parents before they died. And I was like a puddle. I mean, I just completely lost my shit. But, you know, it was perfect for the film. I mean, at first I thought I fucked up the whole thing, and I thought I was going to have to do it over again, and I thought it wasn't going to fit with the other monologues and everything else that I had planned out. And I'm so meticulous with my writing. You know, like everything has to fit with everything else. But it was better than anything I could have written. You know, it was better than anything I could have thought of with, you know, like with these preconceived notions and with everything else that I was working on. It was just better. And it wound up staying in the movie. And I just realized that if I stayed on the script, there's no way that I could have found that. And I also realized that, and you know, this might sound trite and corny to some people, but that moment in the film, but also that moment in my life, really healed me from a lot of stuff, a lot of anger that I've been carrying with me my whole life, and a lot of pain and regret that I had been, you know, holding on to, especially since my parents had passed. And, you know, so, you know, the notion that art heals is such a real thing. You know, it's something that I believe in so deeply. You know, I've had so many experiences in my creative life that have literally healed me, that have saved my life. And I mean literally saved my life. You know, if you watch my second movie, you'll be watching a struggle that I actually struggled with in my real life. And if I hadn't made that film, I might not be here right now making this video. And if I hadn't found that monologue that day, if I hadn't fucked up the script, you know, if I hadn't let it go and just gone with it, you know, at the least that movie wouldn't have been as good as it is. And I think it's a really good film. I'm really proud of it. It's the first thing that I ever did in filmmaking. You know, it's like I had been a theater artist, you know, like I had no idea what I was doing, but because of that, using that camera, that phone, I learned how to use a camera because it had all the manual controls that a camera has, but also, you know, I knew how to be an actor, obviously. I'd earned my living as an actor on stage, doing live performing for years. But I learned so much more that day. And so I think part of the lesson is that, you know, don't think you know everything. Even when you think you've mastered your craft, you haven't mastered shit. You haven't done anything. You know, every day that you're allowing yourself to be creative, you're learning something about your life. You're learning something about your art form, your craft, whatever you want to call it, but you're learning something about your life as well. And that's probably more important, and it's crucial for your art. You know, you have to stay open and you have to be willing to go to places that you might not be comfortable with, that you might not understand, you know. You got to be willing to do that. Otherwise, you're not going to grow. So that was an amazing moment, and that was an amazing story, and it was something completely unexpected, and so I wanted to include that in one of my stories in 4K, even though, you know, I have these things in my life that just seem to happen that are crazy. And if you go to my first season of stories in 4K, you'll see a lot of them. It's just insanity. But I wanted to include this. I just looked at how long I've been talking because there is a 30-minute limit on this camera for shooting in 4K, but I'm not even close. I'm at 15 minutes. So anyway, that happened. That was pretty amazing, and I'm so grateful for that moment, and I'm so grateful for that film. As a matter of fact, at the end of this video, I'll link I'll link that movie. You can see it here on YouTube for free. It's on other streaming services as well, but I left it here for you because I want you to see it. And again, it's my first movie. I shot it on a phone, and I learned so much from that. And I'm going to stop now. I'm up here in Highland, New York. I'm going to meet with my friend Audrey tomorrow to see a film down in Pleasantville, New York. And, you know, sometimes you got to get out of the city too. It's a big world out here. Sometimes you got to get out and learn and grow and evolve and take in the whole world. Please subscribe. Please hit the like button, and please consider joining my Patreon. Trying to grow that channel. I have some goals that I want to get to by the end of April. I won't bore you with all of them, but I'm just hoping it happens. But I could use more Patreon members. The names you see scrolling here are my superheroes, my own personal superheroes. And they're probably superheroes for many people because they're true patrons of the arts. And specifically patrons to my art, which is something I will never take for granted and is my lifeblood and my honor. And every day of my life, I honor their support. And I honor the support of anybody who's kind enough to come here and watch me. Come see me in the theater, watch my movies, watch my YouTube channel. That's just my privilege. So thank you for that. And I'll see you in a minute.